Welcome to Beards and Banter, where we talk North Carolina politics and we also talk a little trash to each other. You are now in a very cool place. A very cool place. I am Darrell Johnson.
I'm Patrick.
He's just Patrick. So this show is about dissecting the complex things that our decision makers in Raleigh make, and we break it down to a level where we can take it home, it's easily digestible, but also get to know the people behind these decisions and get to know the groups that represent the organizations across the state that do the great work of informing people, but also uplifting their voices. So throughout this show, if you keep continuing to click and subscribe, you're going to hear a lot from the people that are doing the work to make sure you have the information you know to impact your everyday life. So the $1 million question is, why this show and why are these two guys with these hats on and rocking these cool beards? Why are y'all up here talking? A little bit about me. I'm from North Carolina. I spent a lot of my career living my dream working in television news, and I really lived that dream and loved every minute of it. But I wanted to do more with life. I wanted to do more meaningful work. I wanted to help people. I chose to go into, work at Progress, North Carolina, just to really help folks out, uplift voices, and find creative ways of making sure that our perspective and our voices are within these stories that are happening coming from the lawmakers. So that's a little bit about me. Patrick, why did you get into this work? Why are you here today?
Well, we worked together at a TV station for several years.
Long years.
And we have a rapport with each other. And you left me there and went to somewhere else, and then to here, and I was jealous because I have opinions, and when you're working in news, you can't tell them, you can't talk about them, and it's kind of a helpless feeling when you've got to cover stuff. And, there's nothing you can really do about it, like on a, professional level. And so this is a great place to work where you can feel like you have a chance to make a difference, and you can actually, do the work, not just hear about it. And, we live in a very important state politically, and, we have a legislature right now that it's been gerrymandered. It doesn't represent the people that live here, and there are a lot of things that are going on that people might not know about, might not understand fully, and we're just two dudes that work in this business now, and not really business, but
community.
Yeah. And this is hopefully going to be a good way to inform people who, want to feel like they can do something but they don't know what.
And I think that's the biggest thing, like really just informing the folks on what's happening, how it's happening, how does it impact you, and then hearing from those folks and bringing the information back to share with the guests that we'll have on the show. So like I mentioned earlier, you have a lot of folks throughout the show, throughout the episodes that will really be the decision makers, the people that impact the community, the people that work with the community. So really want the show to be about community. We want to have some fun. We want to inform people. And more importantly, you should walk away understanding things better, or you should walk away being very inquisitive about, who the particular person was on the show or what they stand for, or what they do. But more importantly, how do you get more involved? And so that's what I want to see from this. And I think we're going to hit those objectives, and that would be great, especially with an important year, like you said. And there's so much going on Jones Street in that nice haunted building, as I like to call it. And so just talk to the folks that have to really endure that. It will be pretty awesome, and just, relaying the important information to people. So, yeah, that's where we are, y'all. But before we dive into that, we got to have a little fun here. We got to talk about some fun things that's going on, or, like I said, not all this doom and gloom. I saw recently that our friends at the Raleigh Police Department found a 5-foot iguana roaming around the city. And within the news article that I read, it was saying that if you see any more, call people. So I don't know if climate change is making the iguanas appear, or I know that there are a lot of folks that have them as pets and maybe a couple got away. Don't know, but they put out that really cool statement of if you see them around, let them know. So I don't know. I'm very curious about what's happening.
I think it's awesome. I mean, if it's climate change, it's not awesome. But just in general, if we had iguanas in North Carolina, I would be down with it. I think that's cool. You can add it to the copperheads. You know, that's a big thing in North Carolina. Everyone likes to talk about the copperheads. We've got armadillos now, like
Coyotes.
Bears. Like, there's cool like stuff. There's cool wildlife.
Just know we're the fastest growing state for more than one reason, y'all. It's because more than people, you know. Animals love us too. So there we go. I think the interesting part within all of that is now we have is, you know, cicada season. And as you mentioned, copperheads, which on the hierarchy of venomous snakes, they're supposed to be some of the coolest ones in terms of they don't really bother people. They're always hiding in dark places. They just chilling. They like cicadas as a nice treat. So there was a warning that says if you have cicadas nearby, look out for copperheads because they will go far and beyond to take advantage of that treat. So you could see some slithering up a tree for that cicada. So I just want to warn y'all, it's warm here in North Carolina. So you know what that means. Eyes and ears everywhere. You're going to hear them, but make sure you're looking around too.
How do snakes climb trees?
I said slither up tree.
But how do they slither up a tree?
I'm not a snake. I don't know. Ask Mark Robinson. I don't know.
But I mean, have you thought about it? Like, they don't have legs.
But you know what? Maybe we'll bring someone in from North Carolina Zoo and they can break it down to us. How about that? Let's do that.
I could just Google it too, but...
Yeah, that works too.
Yeah.
So more importantly, the next person that we'll talk to might can produce some legislation to help with the cicada problem. Just kidding. Not really. There's more serious things going on in North Carolina than that, but stay tuned.
We are here with North Carolina House Representative Julie Von Hafen, District 36. You are a Democrat, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we'll just start at the very beginning, I guess, of your journey here in the General Assembly. What made you decide to run? You won in 2018, right? You beat Nelson Dollar, who had been the representative in your district now for 14 years at that time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just like what made you decide to run, and did you think that you had a chance, or was this just like something you did and you're like, maybe I'll win?
Yeah, I mean, running for office is not something I really ever had planned on doing. At the time in 2018, I was the Wake County PTA president. Had been involved with PTA and public school advocacy for about a decade at that point. My kids were, in elementary and middle school, but I had been involved since my oldest started kindergarten, honestly, like shelving books in the media center, like any other parent volunteer gets started. They kind of rope you into one thing, and then sooner or later you're PTA president. So, I kind of rose up in leadership and, like I said, was the PTA president for the whole county school system, which at the time was 182 schools. So it was a really big job. I was also serving on the North Carolina PTA board as the state advocacy chair. So I was, kind of came from organizing, organizing parents and advocates across the state through North Carolina PTA. And I was approached in early 2018 after several redistricting lawsuits were decided. And there was actually 2 other candidates who were going to be running in the district I now serve in, District 36. But because of these lawsuits, basically they were drawn out of the district when the General Assembly redrew the legislative districts. Probably on purpose, because the incumbent knew that these 2 candidates were going to run. They were going to have a primary, but they were strong candidates. So they didn't have a candidate, and it was only about a week or 2 before the filing deadline. So, our House caucus works very hard to recruit candidates, so they were kind of honestly scrambling a little bit to find somebody. And kind of just ironically, a teacher at our at the school where my kids went, that I was a PTA president at, her husband actually worked for the House caucus, and she was like, I think Julie Von Hafen might live in that area. She's great. She'd be the perfect person to run. And basically just got a phone call, and they were like, will you come in and talk to us about it? And I was like, no, I got 2 meetings and I got all these other things going on. But I ended up going in a meeting with them. They said, well, you'll have to decide by Tuesday. And this was like a Thursday. So when you asked, did I think I was going to win? Did I honestly had no idea probably what I was getting into. My district ended up being one of the most competitive races in 2018. I was trying to flip, like you said, a district where Nelson Dollar represented. He had been there 7 terms. And also the other thing is I didn't really know, I don't think I had really any awareness of how really honestly powerful he was at the time. He was our appropriations chair. He was in charge of our entire state budget. He was very high up in leadership in the Republican caucus. But, as a new person to politics, I didn't know any of that. I just thought I'm going to try to win. And so I did. And it probably helped me because I really wasn't intimidated at all by it. And so I just, worked really, really hard. We had a lot of help from the governor that year. He had this big effort called Break the Majority, and put a lot of money into the legislative races because he had been in office 2 years as a lame duck governor pretty much because he didn't have veto power. And so just was really proud to flip the district by 885 votes.
Oh, wow.
It was very close. But yeah, it was a great night and very exciting.
And you'd mentioned that Nelson Dollar was like the appropriations guy. Do you think that was because of his last name or just...
I never really thought of it until afterwards, and I was like, I could have had a lot of jokes about that, like on my campaign mailers, but I didn't. My policy work in the General Assembly kind of focuses around like the 3 E's, education, equality, and the environment. So when I talk about education, of course, coming from my public school advocacy background, that was always going to be kind of the number one thing that I worked on. When I got there, I felt more comfortable with it. Like I knew a lot of the issues, that were going on back in 2018, and many of them are still going on now. So, I really focused a lot on that at first. I tried to get on the K-12 education committee, as a freshman, but didn't get on. The speaker has full authority over who gets to be on what committees, and I'm sure they didn't want, a public school parent advocate, maybe being on the education committee.
How about that?
Yeah, you'd think it would be a good thing, but never got put on it until this year. They finally put me on it, so I've been very happy to sit on that committee this year. But so of course I focus on education issues. My second biggest issue is around equality, and I kind of lump a lot of things in that, whether it's reproductive rights, women's equality. I'm like the lead sponsor of the Equal Rights Amendment bill every year, whether it's LGBTQ equality, like all those kind of things, I kind of lump under that E. And then the environment is something that I'm really passionate about. And honestly, it's probably like the one thing that young people talk to me most about, climate change and all those kind of things. That's something they're very concerned about. And my husband's actually an environmental economist at NC State. So it's just something we talk a lot about, at home. And it's just like something that's really prevalent in our family conversations. So it's really important to me too.
Yeah. And how do you feel about the fact that we just entirely skipped spring here?
I don't like it. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
I feel like it was like 50s and then now it's just like 80s, 90s. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
And apparently there's some iguanas on the loose in Raleigh.
yeah,
so
now there are iguanas. So
I thought they were cicadas.
and cicadas too. Yeah.
And copperheads are looking for them too.
So in your time so far in office, just quickly, like what kind of changes, good or bad, have you seen in the General Assembly, or has it just, been the same and not great?
I would say that like the good thing that I've seen is that we have a lot of great new members, especially, I have to say on the Democratic side, we have some younger people, which I think is like a really good thing. We have a lot of diversity in our caucus. I mean, we've always kind of had that, but like it's just been exciting to see kind of like younger and newer people coming from different backgrounds being elected into our caucus. That's probably the only good thing that I've honestly seen. I mean, the last 5-6 years since I've been there, I think one of the really bad things that I've seen is kind of this consolidation of power and the lack of transparency and the lack of the ability of the public to be involved in what we're doing there. And I think that, whether it's having committee meetings scheduled like with 30-minute notices, like even to members, and not public not able to come down and weigh in on different bills, whether it's not publishing bills on our website so that people can read them. Even members like are struggling to get, copies of bills. And when I say members, I mean Democrats, because in the minority party, they all know what's going on, but we are like scrambling to find out, what's going on. Whether it's the budget and how we do the budget, it's all behind closed doors. It's all a very small number of people who are involved with that. That's really disturbing because, we're supposed to be representing the people and the people are supposed to be there being involved in what's going on and watching it and seeing, how the sausage gets made, so to speak. And all of that has really gone out the window, especially since I've been there. I think, you can speak to members that have been there longer than me, but I think they would probably agree with that it's all behind closed doors now and nobody really knows what's going on. And now this, we passed last year that now public records are even not able to be obtained. We can keep whatever, like I could decide, I don't want, that email is not public. And that's for me to decide? No, that shouldn't be for me as a member to decide. That should be for the public. So it's really disturbing.
And do you see that changing at all? I know, Tim Moore drew himself a congressional district, and so I'm sure he'll be in Washington, and there'll be a new speaker here in Raleigh. It's just going to be the same? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, they all are very much in lockstep down there. I don't see anybody, going off, veering off away from the pack. They keep their caucus very together and very focused on the same things. And so I don't see that changing no matter who's up on the dais.
Okay. And speaking of just extremism and all of that, you recently attended a Moms for Liberty event. And what motivated you to go, and like what did you see there?
So I had seen, that they were going to have this meeting. It was called a town hall, and it was advertised as a public meeting. As a representative, I do pride myself on the fact that I will meet with anybody who asks. I don't only meet with people that I agree with. I don't only meet with people that are going to be friendly to me. And some people criticize that from, about me. They're like, why would you meet with that person? They're hateful, or they're part of this horrible group, or they're against everything you stand for. But I'm like, if I don't meet with them, then I can't criticize them for not meeting with the people that I care about. You know what I mean? And I get really upset when members of the other party don't meet with groups, whether it's, educators or doctors or pro-choice advocates. A lot of them don't meet with those groups. They're just like, nope, I don't need to hear from you. So I just feel like I can't be that way. I will meet with anybody. So when I heard about this meeting, I just thought, what better way to kind of understand and know what that group is going to be advocating for this year in this short session. What are their plans going forward? Because we need to be aware of what they're doing and what they're going to be talking about, because unfortunately they've kind of controlled the narrative around education lately. And so we really need to be aware of what are their talking points? What are their arguments? And so what better way to do that than to sit in a meeting and listen to the very people who are pushing this? And I wasn't even aware, but one of the co-founders of Moms for Liberty the nationwide group was there.
Oh, wow.
And she, the woman who was on 60 Minutes and, got interviewed or whatever, I don't even remember her name, but she was there. And, they had all these different panels. And so that was just my whole point. And I went to listen. Honestly, that was it. And unfortunately, there was some protesters that kind of got out of control at the end, and it kind of devolved, unfortunately. But I wasn't involved in any of that, and I was just there to listen. So
Just to touch on just education a little bit, did you ever think, like, in your 5 years of being in your position, that when you're having conversation about education, you're not really having conversations about education, if that makes sense? Did you ever think that would be an actual thing where you're sitting through floor debates and other things and reading bills, and it's not about funding students and funding our education support system, it's just about everything else besides giving students what they need to be successful?
yeah, I mean, I think when I was doing PTA work, and then my first couple of years in the legislature, I mean, education was becoming a lot more partisan, even back then. But we all know COVID and the pandemic changed everything, and the mask mandates and the vaccines and all that kind of stuff is really what arose, this kind of push to make it seem that parents were not welcome in school or that they weren't involved. And as a decades-long, parent advocate and parent teacher association leader, who all I did for 10 years was try to get parents to come into the classroom and try to get them to come into school, it was honestly almost like personally offensive to sit there and listen to these arguments on the floor that, well, parents are being excluded and parents are not involved and schools don't want parents. And so we need to demand, that we get in those classrooms and see what's happening. And that's just not at all the case. And that just frustrates me so much when I hear that, because schools want communities and parents and grandparents and, volunteers to be there. They need them. And so, yes, I mean, we've diverted away from focusing on what's important, and that's the kids. Mm-hmm. Now it seems to be all about the parents and what's good for the parents and make sure the parents know what's happening. And it's like, wait a minute, we're losing our focus here. Like, we need to be focused on what the kids are doing and what's important to them and what they need.
And what do, what being at the Moms for Liberty event and hearing whatever it is they had to say, I have a feeling I know. Why do you think that it's been, I don't know if it's been effective, but at least they're a very loud minority, a very vocal minority of people? Do you see their influence on our politicians in Raleigh?
Well, the loudest voice always seems to get the most attention, and what I've told people, I mean, you remember back before COVID, I mean, there was huge teacher marches, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we had 2 massive marches on Raleigh, and that got a lot of attention. And there was a lot of, focus on teachers and, this upswell of support for them. And that was so amazing to see. And then COVID happened. Right. And so now, the narrative is now shifted, and they're the loudest voice. So I don't necessarily think they have the most support. It's just, I wish that there was that upswell of more public school supporters, parents, community members, business, whoever it is, just saying, this is ridiculous, people. We have great public schools that 1.4 million kids go to, and that's what we need to be focused on. And just right now, for whatever reason, they are just the loudest voice, the most aggressive voice. And we just need more voices in the conversation. And I don't know if it's just parents are tired. I have 3 kids of my own. After COVID, it was exhausting, and I just think everyone's kind of tired, but they're not. And so they're very motivated, and they're very loud, and they're very organized. And we just have to be the same.
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, it is a little. And
that should motivate people.
Well,
we need
sure.
to be as loud and as organized as they are. And we have the numbers, we have the public support, we have all of that. It's just getting more people out there talking about it.
Absolutely.
Earlier this week, I did a press conference, and we're rolling out a messaging platform called the Children's Bill of Rights to kind of counteract, like the Parents' Bill of Rights that they passed last year. Well, we couldn't stop the Parents' Bill of Rights, but we can talk about, like I said before, like centering kids and like what do kids in this state deserve? And so we came up with like these 10 things, and we had this great press conference earlier this week where I brought in 4 students, and they spoke at the press conference because we don't listen to the voices of our kids enough. We had a 4th grader who probably spoke more eloquently than some members, of the legislature. She was incredible. We had a middle schooler, we had 2 high schoolers. And so those are the kind of things that keep motivating me and make me want to be there, because I can use my platform to raise other people's voices. And that's kind of all we can do right now.
And what can your constituents or just people around North Carolina that don't like what they're seeing, how can they support your efforts and the Democratic Party's efforts in the General Assembly? What can we do?
Well, one thing, like I said, sometimes this work and being in the super minority is extremely emotionally draining for us. So even just a thank you, honestly, just thanking your representative, your senator, if they're voting the way that you want them to, or that you're appreciating their work, it goes so far to keep us going. Because sometimes if I feel like nobody's knowing what's going on or nobody's paying attention, it's kind of like, well, what's the point? So if I at least know, somebody just DMs me on social media or retweet something that I did, or, repost something, and it's like, hey, look at what's happening. It means so much, at least to me. I'm not going to speak for all of my colleagues, but I think that just a simple thank you goes a long way. And I just think also, if there are bills that you're seeing coming up, like the ICE bill or the voucher bill, just having our backs, being spread the word about how bad these bills are. I think that just right now, people are overwhelmed with information, and there's a lot of focus on national issues, but there's some really, really important things going on at the state level, and we just don't get enough press coverage or interest in that. So anything you can do to just help us spread the word about what's happening is really helpful.
How do you restrain yourself during floor debates? I know me and Patrick have sat back and watched some floor debates about some wild bills, and we just heard some of the speeches, the comments, and I know if I'm in there, you're gonna have to restrain me in the chair, because I'm ready to run across the room. What keeps you restrained in that room? Because there's some wild stuff that comes out of people's mouths sometimes.
That's for sure. I said during COVID, it was actually, we had to wear masks. So I would, have my mask on and just be kind of muttering under my breath, under my mask, which is kind of nice. You feel like you could vent a little bit. My colleagues keep me sane. We'll try to, we'll look at each other, give each other looks, but we're on camera in the chamber. So I don't want to be too overtly, doing that. But I don't know, just, you just have, I think for me, I'm trying to just focus on what I'm going to talk about and what I'm going to say. But I do listen to what they say, because sometimes I'll respond, but it's kind of annoying because, when I give a speech or another Democrat gives a speech, a lot of times they literally will just leave. They'll leave the chamber, they'll get on their phone, or they're talking amongst themselves.
Kick their feet up and start reading the newspaper or something.
Yes,
yeah, we've seen it all.
Literally, yeah. And so that's really disrespectful. So I try to at least listen to what they're saying, but I could have a running commentary in my own head.
Fair enough.
So I've got one serious question left, and then maybe some fun stuff. So Republican leadership, Tim Moore, Phil Berger, they've said, at least in the media, that they don't plan to address abortion in the short session. Do you believe that?
I do, just because I'm never say never, knock on wood, and everything that's around me, because I don't, I don't trust or believe anything that they say, honestly. Because I was there in 2019 when the veto override thing happened, and it was like still have PTSD because they had told us we weren't going to have votes, and then we did, and they overrode the budget veto, and it was horrible, and I was there, and for all the people that are new to North Carolina politics, just go Google. It was terrible
Scary
day.
hours.
Yeah. So I don't really like put much faith in anything, but I will say that, people have asked me that a lot this year, like coming up to the short session. So I always say, like, there's two ways of thinking about it. Like, either they know they're going to lose their supermajority, and so they want to like get everything that they can through this year before that happens, or they know abortion bans are unpopular and they want to win elections, so they wouldn't do anything. And so I think they're kind of going more toward that side, that they know that this is not popular. They've seen like the blowback from the SB 20. And so I think they'll hold off on probably doing anything. And I think Tim wants to get to his congressional campaign. So what I've heard is they're trying to make the short session actually short.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens, because I've heard that before too.
Yeah. All right. Well, fingers crossed that they don't
Yeah.
do anything worse. So, fun questions. First one: Do you use profanity? And if so, what is your favorite word? And we can bleep it out if it's worthy of it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not a big swearer, although I will, I do use the F word occasionally, and probably more often lately.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But that would probably be it. I'm not like some of my colleagues who
Yeah.
are very much like, they have a very like eloquent way of swearing, like, with like all the derivatives. But no, I'm really not like that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Do you eat barbecue? You are in North Carolina, in any kind, pork, chicken, tofu, whatever. Do you eat it, and where do you have a favorite place to get it?
So I do have to admit, I'm not a native. Of course, there's not many around, but I've been in North Carolina 20 years about. I'm from Ohio originally, so I always say I do like Western barbecue more, because it's more similar to what we have like in Ohio and like kind of the Midwest barbecue, whatever that is. But my favorite place actually isn't around in the Triangle. It's in the mountains. In Linville, North Carolina, there's a little shop called the Old Hampton Store, and it's just such a great atmosphere, and they have great barbecue there.
Nice.
So stop by the next time you're there.
And I've got, since you're from Ohio, and we are in North Carolina, who's first in flight?
I knew you were gonna say it. I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming.
It's funny because when I practiced law, I actually lived in Dayton, which is where
Yeah.
the Wright brothers are from. But yeah, I mean, I have to say North Carolina, just because, I mean, that's where it happened. So, yeah.
That's the
think
only
that's
answer.
fair.
Ohio, I think they say they're first in aviation.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of true. So,
Fine. Well, that's okay. We'll accept it.
split the difference.
Yeah. So, do you have a favorite place to visit in North Carolina? And what do you like about it?
Yes, I mean, my family's lucky enough to have a mountain house in Linville, which is where the restaurant is. So it's in Avery County, North Carolina, near Linville Falls on the Blue Ridge Parkway, and that's my favorite place. We bought it during COVID, and it was just sanctuary during all the crazy, and it's still a sanctuary for me, because when I go there, I feel like a different person almost. Like there's just something about getting out of the Triangle and just going somewhere different, and it's just a peaceful, relaxing place, and I just love everything about the mountains. So I go there as much as I can.
It's definitely different. I go to like Beach Mountain a lot, which I guess is like Avery or
close,
Watauga
yeah.
County, and it's like a whole different world.
Yeah,
than-
you don't
than
even
being
feel like
here.
you're in North Carolina.
No,
almost.
they have like completely different weather. Like it snows there. It's like it's wild.
Yep.
So like in your district, which towns are you?
My district is mostly all of Apex, which is where I live in Apex, and then Holly Springs and a little bit of Cary.
And what's like, you have like a favorite place to go there, favorite park, favorite restaurant, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so if you've never been to downtown Apex, it's very historic. It looks just like it did, back in the day when Apex was formed or whatever. We just celebrated our 150th anniversary in Apex, so it's a really cute little downtown. And there's one of my favorite like foods or whatever, or something I always order it whenever if I see it on a menu is a patty melt.
Mm-hmm.
So I love patty melts. And there's a pub there called Salem Street Pub. It's right on Salem Street, and they have the best patty melt I've had in the Triangle. So if you like patty melts, go there and have one.
Peak of good living right
Yeah,
there.
the peak of good patty melts.
And last one I've got for you. What's something that you're embarrassed to admit that you like? Like do you like gossip magazines? What kind of thing are you?
Well, I'm not embarrassed to admit it, but I'm a huge Swiftie. I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan. I got to see her last year in concert in Nashville. So not embarrassed to admit that at all. You'll know that about me if you follow my social media. But I guess I love music. I go to tons of concerts, but I like all kinds of different music. I'm a big country music fan, but I also like pop and rock and everything. But the one band that I've seen multiple times I absolutely love, and they give a great show, is the Backstreet Boys.
Wow.
All right.
They're amazing, and I mean, it probably just goes back to my teenage years or whatever, but if you ever want to see them, but I'm not really embarrassed to admit that, but it's probably something, you might not know about me, so love Backstreet Boys.
Were they doing like a residency in Vegas, or are they?
I went.
Oh, really?
I went, yes. It was actually coincided, the National PTA had their conference in Vegas. And the Backstreet Boys just happened to be literally right next door at Planet Hollywood. So I was like, well, I have to go. And I brought one of my, another woman that was on the PTA board with me, and she had never seen him in concert. And it was like at this kind of a smaller theater at Planet Hollywood. And she left like a major fan. I said, see, like I told you, it was amazing.
Backstreet Boys. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hey, don't judge. You asked the question.
Yeah, no, I'm
So does that mean, since you're a Swiftie, does it mean you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan too?
No, I'm a huge Cincinnati Bengals fan. But, if they're not playing, I will probably root for the Chiefs. So,
Okay.
But not,
at least until they break up.
Yeah, exactly. No,
Oh, we're
Bengals
counting on
fan
that,
my
yeah.
whole life. Like, that will never change.
Chiefs era
so,
is over.
Oh my goodness.
yes.
Oh.
Well, that's all I've got. I don't know if you
No,
got.
appreciate you for coming.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank
spending
you.
time with us. Yeah, I got to learn about you. And like I said, we always see you in the floor debates and the speeches, being vocal, representing the people. And I just really wanted to know how you survive it all. And now I know. So thank you for what you did. Like, really, thank you. It means a lot to know that there's some people with some sense down there. So thank you so much for representing the great people of Apex and Holly Springs and the western part of Wake County. Really appreciate you for that.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for being our first guest. This is exciting. So
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, so that means, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back with the Bozo of the Week.
So that was very cool. Thank you to Representative Julie Von Hafen.
Yeah,
That was really cool. That was enlightening, and
we're famous.
we're setting a very high bar for ourselves as far as guests go.
That's right. So everyone else that comes on this show, you got to fill that seat and bring that energy because anything less will be uncivilized.
So now is a time for a segment that I'm going to call Hey Bozo. And every episode, we will feature a bozo, a North Carolina politician who is being a bozo, and we will play you a clip just to prove ourselves and this person's bozo bona fides, and then we'll react to it.
Roll the clip.
In fact, it's safe to say that right now I believe China is in charge of the United States of America. I'm not ashamed to say it.
So that was Mark Robinson,
Mark Keith Robinson.
Lieutenant Governor, current Lieutenant Governor,
Scary times.
Republican nominee to be the next governor, and that you heard him. If you haven't heard him before, you've heard some of him now. And if you have heard him before, I'm sorry, you just had to hear him again. But
And again, it's the gift that keeps on giving, y'all.
I don't know if it's a gift, but
It's not a good gift, but
it's something.
it keeps on giving.
It's like the flaming bag of dog poop on your porch, and it just keeps showing up.
I never had that experience.
I haven't either, but I've seen movies.
Yeah, I think it's important, for folks to educate themselves on who Mark Robinson really is. As we get closer and closer to November, you're going to get the watered down, washed down version of Mark Robinson. He may come off as one thing, but he's truly another. And the beautiful part about it is he's not ashamed of it. He's not shy from it. If you just go through his social media, his posts are still there. If you go find his videos on YouTube, it's still there. And you're going to hear a lot of it's taken out of context. No, Marky Mark, it's not taken out of context. You said it. We're just sharing it. So educate yourselves on him. We're not going to tell you what to do or how to do it, but educate yourselves on Mark Robinson and know who the true person is before you come in contact with him between now and November.
All right.
It's our PSA.
Yeah. So do we want to do 3 things to know before we go?
So as we close out, 3 things you should know. Number one, make sure you have an up-to-date and accurate identification. Driver's license, identification card, passport, wherever the case may be, make sure you have up-to-date identification with an up-to-date look, but also your address. Because in North Carolina this year, voter ID is in effect, which means you need your ID in order to vote. Make sure you have that. Number 2, make sure you register to vote. Make sure your information is up to date. Make sure it's accurate. You don't want no complications, no problems. You don't want to be a provisional ballot or whatever the case may be. You want to walk in during early voting or election day, and your information is perfect. So you're walking in, you're showing who you are, your address is great. You go into the booth and you're doing your thing. Make sure those 2 things are up to par. You have plenty of time now to do it, so please do it. Patrick, number 3.
I thought you were gonna have 3.
That's 2.
I'm not doing the other one.
You're not doing the third one?
No, I'm not doing it.
Patrick had a third one in our production meeting, but he's not going to share today, which is totally fine. Your third one is to be right back here when the next episode drop. That's your third one. It's going to be bigger and better each time. So until next time, be good, stay safe.
Bigger and better, man. Every time.
Every time.
Okay.
So yeah, be good, stay safe, voter ID, voter registration. Those are 2 assignments before the next show. Peace.
Happy birthday to my wife.
Aww.